Thank you. Don't I get a
Hi,
bump?
everybody. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. It's much warmer here than it is backstage.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know. It's really cold back there. Thanks for coming, guys.
It's good to be here. Thanks.
Okay, so listen, I have questions that are going to be for sometimes one of you, sometimes both of you. We're going to get through it okay? All right, so let's just start with Prosus itself, Prosus and Naspers. Now you guys are, I don't want to like overstate this, but you guys are a huge company. You're a giant. You were South Africa's biggest company, and then you went off and split yourself in half to go and list a big chunk of yourself. Now you've got 60 billion plus valuations in both Amsterdam Exchange and in South Africa. You're doing very well. Vast empire. You've got Tencent, of course. Your shareholding in Tencent is part of Prosus. You've got tons of e-commerce and all kinds of things. We'll get into that later. And then you've got education tech with Brainly and others. So give me an idea of where EdTech is fitting into the bigger scheme for you guys.
No, absolutely. And I think for us, what the red thread has been is when we start investing into a new area, we typically do it out of our ventures group.
Yeah.
Ventures group is spread all over the world. They're mainly based out of San Francisco. And they got us into lots of new things that are exciting. So they got us into food delivery, which is now one of our biggest investment
we'll go into
areas.
that later, yeah.
Yeah, but also into to EdTech. And what attracted us initially is that just such a large global need, right? People need to educate themselves, and I would say even more so now than before, and even more in the future, as people need to reskill. And if you look at how people learn, in many ways it's still pretty old-fashioned, right? You have a teacher, a bunch of kids, and books, or a bunch of grown-ups and books. But technology, I think, can so much enhance the way people learn, and we think that's just a tremendous long-term opportunity to use technology to make people much better off.
Do you see EdTech as, in the Naspers Prosus view, I'm just going to call you Prosus from now on, by the way, just to make it simple, yeah. In the Prosus view, do you see EdTech as another branch of, pardon for being so crass, but e-commerce? Essentially because it becomes another thing that you can buy and sell online.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, probably Michal has a better answer than I will. But no, I think what we see it is, and I think the way we see our own business, like technology can really do certain things fundamentally better.
Yeah.
And when we see sort of this big human need, where we know that technology, I think technology probably plays a role in 5% of education today. I think it will be 100% a number of years from now. So not really e-commerce, but more like technology powering a basic human need.
Right. You guys have, your interaction with Naspers, through Naspers Ventures, is that you raised some money this summer, 30 million? Congratulations.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you very much.
So let me just ask by starting, so first of all, Brainly, you guys, maybe you want to give a very quick description of what you guys are.
Sure. So Brainly is an online learning community for middle and high school students. And what students do is that they come to our platform and they ask questions and answer questions that are education related. So typically this is homework help, test preparation, etc. And we managed to bring it to quite a massive scale because we operate in markets like starting from Indonesia through Russia, Brazil, the US, India.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big audience, about 150 million monthly users active on the platform.
Right.
So that's a...
Yeah.
I like to sum up what we are doing in a way, like when I was in high school, I really wish I had a product like Brainly.
You're right.
Because it just makes learning so much more fun and more efficient.
Yeah. It's kind of like a Quora for homework-related questions.
Correct.
Okay, so one of the reasons for that funding was to kind of go deeper into the US. How has that been working out for you guys?
Well, we are doing really great in the US. Right now, about 20% of middle and high school students use us every month. We see growing usage from parents, and the parents' use case is very interesting, as they get asked to help their kids with homework, and then they don't know how to help, so they come to us.
Yeah.
They learn how to do it, and then they go and explain to their kids. Typically, they don't really mention us to their kids, which is sad, but still, it's a pretty cool use case. So US is growing really nice. We are growing at about 100% year over year. Usage is amazing. We started monetization, very happy about the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you breaking out yet how many users are going off from the ad-supported to paid yet?
No, we are not releasing.
You're not talking yet?
No.
Okay, yeah, because you wouldn't answer that question the last time I asked you. Okay, so it's quite interesting because Prosus, I would say that the bulk of your holdings and interests are European, developing markets, not so much US. Do you see things like this as an opportunity to potentially break deeper into the US market?
So strangely, now we're in Europe, I can say this. I would say that we don't necessarily think US focused or even sort of geo focused, right? We're a growth company. We're growing in aggregate our revenues at around 30% rate, which means if you want to do that, you're looking for business models that are growing explosively. Ideally in markets that are growing explosively. So that's why we very often end up in places like India and China. Yeah. But if we see a great opportunity in another market, even if the market itself might not be growing very fast, we'll go there as well.
Yeah.
I think what Michal is doing in the US is just like, his business model is awesome, frankly, and it worked really well in Eastern Europe initially, but then literally in other places in the world, so why not go after the US as well?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned India. You guys have a massive EdTech play in India, which is Byju's.
Yeah.
Byju's,
yeah.
Which is huge in that country. I mean, it's a really obvious thing. Often what investors do is they help create strategic connections between portfolio companies. Are you doing anything with trying to bring Brainly closer in with these companies? And was that something that helped you make the choice of whether to go with Naspers as an investor, given that they've got these connections with these? I mean, you've also got Udacity, Code Academy. You guys have a substantial EdTech play already. It's not just Brainly. You guys looking for connects between them all or not?
So in our case, it was that we launched India a while ago, but we were looking at initial results and we were excited, but we never really, so we were curious about the market, but we were not at the stage to decide, okay, let's launch, let's be serious about it. And one of the discussions with people at Prosus helped us to understand the opportunity in the market, and we started focusing on it. And from like the collaboration perspective, it's great to meet Baiju and talk to him about the Indian market and how well they're doing.
You have met them.
Yeah. These connections is something that Prosus is really good at.
I mean, is that the kind of thing that you guys would try to encourage, or that you would want to do to start building out new products?
I think one of the things that we care a lot about is that, first of all, empowering people like Michal to build a great business, right? And that's, I think, what we really want to do is make sure we don't get in the way and give you everything that might be a possibility to be more successful. If it's connections with other companies, and in some cases, there's actually areas where we can help out, we're very happy to do so. But Michal runs the show.
Right. I mean, do you think that you guys might ever want to go into that step of doing, a little bit like Facebook with its message commenting, which it runs across publications? You can do Facebook comments. Do you think you would ever want to try to build something like that to be like the conversation layer for EdTech, for example? So, is that something you might move into?
What we are definitely doing is that we are really good at helping students to understand specific questions.
Yeah.
And that's our sweet spot. We stick to it. We love doing that. And that led us to reach market penetration in some markets like Russia and Indonesia of 60 to 80% of all students using us every month.
Yeah.
And what we are definitely looking to do is to set up partnerships with other educational products, because when somebody comes to us, that person tells us what he or she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And clearly we can help with that one specific case. This is what we love doing. But there's clearly an opportunity to direct that user towards other educational sources, so they can learn the topic to full understanding, not only how to solve a specific question.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's always a network effect that's always going to be more powerful than just offering something on your own platform.
Correct.
That if you can do it elsewhere. Okay. But here's another question. This is actually for both of you. Now, you say 150 million users, right? Okay. How have you guys been, this is something I brought up with you before, I know. I'm going to ask you again on stage, but how are you guys dealing with the quality level on that 150 million? That, I mean, how do you know that you've got 150 million actual users rather than 130 plus 20 million bots? How do you know the answers they're giving are good answers? Not plagiarized, not inaccurate?
Yeah, so you know, like on bots, like we definitely do a lot to prevent that.
Yeah.
That's just pure responsibility to the numbers that we share. On content quality, like we do a lot. There is a pre-moderation, meaning even before the content is being posted, we check it automatically. And then there is a post-moderation done by our experts, and we have thousands of people around the world who are helping us as experts to verify content and check the content quality. That said, our approach is also to give a chance. So if we see a small mistake in an answer, like we ask the user to correct it.
Yeah.
So in fact, like the user gets a notification, hey, we spotted up an issue with your answer. Could you correct it? And then at the end, you know, we have also social moderation. So our answers are rated by students. They say, hey, was it really helpful? Wasn't it really helpful? And what I think is something that is really cool that we are doing is that thank you button, because it's an amazing feeling when you give an answer and somebody said thank you to you.
Yeah.
So there's like a multi-layered process for us to verify content quality.
Yeah. I will say that, you know, when you just do a sort of random like sentiment analysis on Brainly, like if you go to Twitter, it's generally a kind of like, what would I do without it? So
yeah, it's low.
I think it's mostly really helpful to people. It's like, I wouldn't be graduating if it wasn't for Brainly, you know, and all of that stuff. So I think mostly people love it. But Bob, how much of that is an issue for you guys? So I know that you love to invest in successful companies, but how much are you guys digging into like the kind of quality level of a product that has like a crowdsourced element to it? Because you know, it's useful, but then sometimes it can be very unuseful. You know, so how big of an issue is that for you guys? Not just with Brainly, but with any product.
Yeah, when we invest or before we invest, we typically spend a tremendous amount of effort in, first of all, understanding customer journeys, and then we're pretty deeply into data analytics. We have a lot of very capable data analytics folks. Actually, remember the last investment round, you and I actually spoke on the phone for quite a bit around the sources of your traffic, the different flows, how it all works, where your customers come from, how do they use the product. So this is very much at the core of what we try to understand deeply before we make an investment. It's our livelihood to get it right, and I think Michal is one of the examples that gets it right.
And are you guys, like when you looked at Brainly though, were you looking for something in that component? Because as I said, you guys have these other EdTech plays. None of them are really, I would not call them conversational, user-generated, social. You know, they're all about actual learning tools. Udacity, Codecademy, Byju's, they're all content generator. They make original content basically in education, whereas this is like a conversation layer. Is that something you guys were looking for to complement the other stuff?
So I think what we found initially just very attractive is, as we were talking before about sort of the love around the product, and that's something we found out pretty quickly. So the first investment was about 3.5, 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
I think when we first were looking at the company, you looked at markets where they were all very, very strong at that time. You see how customers, first of all, customer growth is there, but fundamentally customer satisfaction is there, and it becomes a real part of people's lives. And then we're actually not that particular about in which way does it happen, right? So one of our core commerce businesses, classifieds, where it's also user-generated content, and it's very much bringing people together who then form a conversation that you don't necessarily have a tremendous amount of control over. So what we care about is traction and fundamental customer appreciation. Like, is there a strong reason for people to want to use? Does it actually do what people want on a structural basis?
Okay. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Now, I know I've said this before. I don't know if it annoys you. Do you get annoyed when Naspers and Prosus get compared to Softbank?
No.
You're okay with that comparison?
I'm okay with that.
Are you happy with that comparison? Are you neutral?
You know, I think the comparison is of limited applicability.
I disagree. And I'll tell you why in 2
Good,
seconds.
tell me why. Tell me more.
Okay. Limited. You think it's limited. Why?
So I think the overlap is we invest in tech companies that show high growth. So I think that's actually where, and we happen to have a fairly significant investment in a very successful Chinese company.
Yep.
So those are the two similarities. I think what is quite different is that our investments are, we're not a fund, right? Our investments are not part of a fund. We invest off the balance sheet. We invest for the very long term. Some of our investments are 30 years old. And we actually enter any investment with the intention of keeping it for as long as we can envision. So we're not a fund, not an exit-focused group. And we're quite focused on a number of areas we think we understand. We'll find out if we actually understand them, but we don't spray and pray, right? We actually have core segments where we spend the vast majority of our investments. And we're an operator, right? So my company employs 20,000 people, so we actually do stuff.
Right.
So our engagement doesn't stop with money and advice. We actually bring a fair amount of operating expertise along as well.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in there. I want to just ask, do you think you guys might ever try to do the route of forming a fund in that way?
We've thought about it, but in the end, it doesn't really fit our DNA, right? So if you think about what's made us successful over time, it's partnering with entrepreneurs for the long term. And it's not sort of saying getting in at the right time, getting out at the right time, but rather finding a business model that we think is excellent, that is being pursued by somebody who we think is excellent. And that actually doesn't fit with an exit, right?
Right.
It's actually something that might take a decade, or the best is yet to come after 2 decades. So I don't think the fund thinking fits our view of the world.
What's your opinion on how they've been trying to handle their spray, as you described it, spray and pray? You know, they've had a really difficult turn, I'd say, you know, in the last year. You know, they've been calling in a lot of their bets. They've been, you know, writing down investments. They've been taking over certain companies. They've been pulling out of other things, you know, with WAG and so on. What's your take on that, Bob? Yeah,
so I mean, for me we've actually co-invested with Softbank in the past, and the people I've met there I find impressive, and I have a great deal of respect for. And when we've co-invested, we've been actually very successful. We've invested together in Flipkart. I think it's been a great investment for both of us. I think everybody does their own, has their own philosophy, does things their way, and look, it's very hard for me to comment on their investments. We're not in any of the spaces that they've in, except for a few e-commerce things.
Yeah.
So I can't really comment on what works well for them.
Right.
Can talk what works for us.
Yeah. Do you think that you would ever take an investment from Softbank, Michal?
Like, I don't know.
It's a very different type of investor to Naspers.
Yeah, but you know, I think like from my perspective, it is always the framework of thinking what the value the investor brings to building the long-term vision.
Yeah.
And that's the framework of making decisions. And that's why I really like working with the guys from Prosus.
So can I just ask a question slightly related to Brainly, slightly related to other things? One other area where I think that there might be a connection between what you guys do and what SoftBank does is that occasionally they go and they take something that they've invested in and then buy it outright, and they become the full owners of it. Sometimes you guys do that too. Yeah, occasionally. When do you decide that you'd like to be a full owner of something versus just an investor? What's your metric on that, or lever?
So we've actually very rarely done it. I think what we've done in the past more often, and it's actually good to be a bit specific on it, when we had a minority stake, we go to a majority stake. We've done that in the past.
Yes.
And I think that typically happens when we see, for example, a tremendous amount of synergies between companies in a similar space. So in our classifieds business, we've done that. When we were a minority and we said, hey, look, there's so much value in bringing these things together, it will actually be easier if we are a majority. But we very rarely want to actually, the founders of the companies, we love to have them in. So when we go to a majority, we typically want the founders to stay in and be shareholders. We very rarely have gone to 100% ownership.
Okay, okay. So you don't have any plans of trying to, you know, for example, have you tried to acquire EdTech companies like Brainly?
No, we've not. I think I mean, Michal should speak for himself, but I think he's on a fantastic trajectory
Yeah.
and can work together maybe with some of the portfolio companies, but
Yeah.
but I think he's on a tremendous run.
Happy to
very much.
be an independent company. Okay. I'm going to shift to another vertical that you guys have done a lot in. Now, you guys are in the middle of a major live bid, and so we're not going to be able to talk specifically about that. That's Just Eat. We're just going to have to leave Just Eat on the table. No comments on that, but we can talk about the food space. Now, food is really interesting. It seems like a ton of companies want to be in it. We've got Uber and Amazon, you guys, many startups. Softbank, obviously, doing tons in there. But it's been essentially a very unprofitable operation for quite a lot of the food delivery businesses. Why is everybody so interested in it?
Yeah, I think when you see people spend a lot of money, there's usually something in it, right? So,
Yeah, but what?
or collective foolishness. So, I think it's not collective foolishness. I think what we've seen, and we started investing in food delivery, I think it's about 7 years ago in
Yeah,
Brazil.
you've got stakes in Delivery Hero,
Yeah.
iFood, Swiggy.
That's right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we started very.
Thank you. I did my
your-
homework. Yes.
Your fact knowledge is
Yeah.
shockingly good. No, so we started investing in Brazil in iFood about 7 years ago, and what we saw at the time, right, was a business growing fast, seemed to be serving mainly sort of, I know, well-off people who,
Yeah.
who on occasion wanted to eat well, have a festive meal in the home. What we see now is something completely different. We basically see people eat, on average, maybe 80, 90 times a month, and we think a lot of businesses actually, we think that many of those 90 occasions are going to be served by a food technology company. And interestingly, in our Indian food delivery business in Swiggy, we see some people order actually more than 30 times a month today. So it's basically a meal a day.
More than once a day, yeah.
And when you start to unpack why that is because like we've really moved from food 1.0, which is, oh, a restaurant delivers already now, instead of calling them, I type in on an
Yeah.
app, which is really 1.0, to where India is, which we would call food 3.0, is like Swiggy makes their own food.
Yeah,
If
they've got
there's-
the cloud kitchens.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but beyond that even, right? So
Yeah.
cloud kitchens could be a place where a restaurant opens another location, if you will,
Yes.
but they started making food that didn't exist. For example, salads and bowls was something that just
Okay.
nobody made in India, and then the team of Swiggy Harsha said, I will make salads because it's not that hard to make a salad and everybody wants it, and they just saw the models produced that you need to start selling this, and that kind of innovation then led again to a whole new demand area that just didn't exist before. And another one that surprised me is that now one of the biggest meal occasions for delivery is breakfast, which I don't think is the case anywhere else in the world. In India, they've completely innovated, so they have their delivery fleets out there. They employ about 220,000 people as delivery executives. They have them out there with a limited number of breakfast orders that are like 10 on a scooter already.
Okay.
And whenever people order,
Preloaded, yeah.
preloaded. And it's so convenient for people. It's fast, it's convenient. People actually rather go a little bit earlier to work and eat at work, so they miss some of the traffic jams and get a nice warm meal there.
Okay.
It works really well.
So if I could sum this up, even if there's less return on it now, you think longer term it's bound to dip into being a highly profitable operation?
I think the way we think
and
about
that's
it,
why you guys are so persistent in
exactly.
it?
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think if you look at where food delivery is now, I think it's probably where an Amazon was 20 years ago, where people say, wow, there's some convenient use case, and now people basically online would order just about anything there.
Yeah. So that doesn't sound like something you're going to walk away from as a category, regardless of what happens.
No, the category we think is even though it's quite a big business already, right?
Yeah.
We think it has a massive runway from here everywhere
Yeah.
in the world, and that's really what we're investing against.
And do you think that it's going to be a matter of a few big players? Because it's quite fragmented right now. You have a lot of competition, and it's very expensive competition at the moment. You know,
Yeah.
Uber is putting so much into Uber Eats. You know, companies like Deliveroo in out of Europe, or DoorDash and Postmates. And you know, it's a bit of a race to the bottom. Like they're all spending ridiculous amounts of money. You know, where does that? Who
Yeah.
draws the line on that?
So I think typically when companies spending a lot of money, they're doing it because they think the opportunity is massive, right? That's where we come from. I think that's where others come from. And I think if you want to forecast competitive dynamics in a huge space out 10 years, I think you're going to be very, very wrong typically.
Yeah.
Like if you think about e-commerce, where it was a decade ago or 2 decades ago, where it is today, I think it's completely different than what other people expected, right?
Yeah.
So I think in food as well, I think there will always be competition, there will be several players, there will probably be a lot of innovation in like cloud kitchens, private label. So I think people will specialize in certain meal occasions, different kinds of food. So I think the space is going to be probably 100 times as big in a decade.
Interesting.
And it's probably going to evolve tremendously in terms of who does what.
Yeah, I want to think of what's the good food question to ask you guys. Brainly. Where's Brainly going to go with food?
We're
Brain
not going
food.
anywhere with food,
Brain
but
food.
you know,
Smart
it's on
food.
demand, yeah. Like so you know, it's a different service, but no,
Yeah, I know,
we're not doing
I know.
anything in food.
Both
Yeah.
Michal and I like to eat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll be a customer. Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. Great to have you on stage. Great to see you again, and so great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good luck with everything.
Thanks.
you.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.